Thanks, Karen. Oh, hold on. Got it. There we go. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. So hopefully you are here for this session on implementing WIDA's essential actions in preschool programs. And so I'll be facilitating this session with you for about the next 90 minutes or so. I work at Early Childhood Professional Learning, which is based out of Arlington Heights. But before that, I worked at the Illinois Resource Center for many years, providing in-services and trainings and such around ESL and bilingual education. So with that background, I'm bringing this information to you here today. And also finding out which of my buttons are going to work on the keypad. So if you bear with me for just a second, of course, my Zoom decided to upgrade itself earlier today, and it seems to be doing some odd things. So we'll see how this goes. All right, there we go. All right, fabulous. First thing I'd like to know from you today, this is a brand new webinar that we're offering, literally brand new. So we're going to see how this goes. But one of the things I'd love to know is what interested you about today's session. So if you would, this is our first waterfall chat. Could you type your answer in the chat box? But hold on, you don't have to hit enter yet. So you don't have to feel the pressure of typing quickly or something like that. Of course, no judgment on spelling or anything like that. The idea is just to share your thoughts. You know, what is it that piqued your interest when you saw this session today? So if you could type that in the chat box, and in just a moment, I'm going to count down, and then we're all going to hit enter at the same time. All right, so 3, 2, 1, and go. If you're still typing, that's okay. Keep typing. Okay. Wanted to learn about WIDA and what WIDA is. Preschool and WIDA combination. Nice. More about essential actions. WIDA piqued a lot of people's interest as I'm skimming. I see a lot of the WIDA acronym. All right, cool. How to implement WIDA. All right, awesome. Okay, so excellent. I'll go back and look at these in more detail later, but this is great for me to know as we head into this session today. So I'm glad to know that many of you have heard of WIDA before today's session. So that in and of itself is fantastic. All right, cool. If not, and you're brand new to WIDA, that's okay. We are a WIDA state for K-12 and for preschool as well. And so what that means is we have access to a whole number of different free resources. And so I'll be sharing with you this newest one, which is the Essential Actions Toolkit. All right, so one more thing to help me get to know you a little bit. Could you click on your screen the position that best describes your role in your district, in your program, in your CBO? So are you an administrator, principal, teacher assistant, preschool teacher, ESL bilingual teacher, coach, something that I didn't think to put on there? You can add that. You can click that one and then type it in the chat box. Home daycare provider. Awesome. Thanks, Marissa. Excellent. So let's see who's winning right now. Preschool teachers. We have 6 preschool teachers on right now. And then it's a fairly even split from there. Ooh, early childhood special ed I see flying by in my chat box. Cool. All right. Well, looks like almost everybody's participated, but we got a couple more people. I'll give you a second to click if you can. I totally get it if you're driving and you can't click. That's not a problem. This is just to give me a sense of who's on the call today. So we have 8 preschool teachers. So that's a good portion of the room today. The next largest, how about I just share it with you so you can see it, are ESL bilingual teachers. A couple of coaches, a couple of teacher assistants, and a couple of principals with us too. So fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. Thank you. All right. So here are our objectives for the next hour and a half together. First, I'm going to be sharing with you some of the key components of the essential actions and how it is that they're grouped by what WIDA calls areas of focus. Then we're going to talk about the learning pathways that are contained within the toolkit. And then lastly, at the very end of the day, I'm going to walk you through how to get to all of these free resources if you haven't done so yet. And we're doing that at the end of the day. So that way, those of you who have already downloaded would be able to just go about your evening. And those that need, assistance with different steps, I can help you out with that. You don't need to have the toolkit in front of you this afternoon. I've embedded everything in here and in the handout that you need. But I do want to make sure you know how to access it if that's something that you're interested in. All right, so before we get any further, in every one of my webinars, I start off somewhere near the beginning with this slide or something that looks a lot like this slide, because I often get these questions around, whoa, what about all these terms that you're throwing around? Dual language learner, multilingual learner, or multilingual child, English learner, English language learner. what are we talking about here? Which ones are offensive? Which ones aren't? Like, what's the story with all these acronyms and all these terms? Okay, so let's clear this up. Dual language learner is a term that is used primarily at the national level by organizations like NACE, the National Association for the Education of Young Children, and Head Start. They like to use the term dual language learner, which really means any child that's growing up with exposure to more than one language. Multilingual learner, multilingual child, multilingual student, multilingual, fill in the blank, is a term that was coined initially by, or popularized really by, the WIDA Consortium. And the WIDA Consortium is a group of states. Oh gosh, I don't even know. I think it's in the 40s now, 30 to 40 different states and territories that are all using the same standards and same assessments, K-12. And then there's a smaller subset of those that use it for preschool, for early years. And then English learner or English language learner are the terms that have most recently been used here in the state of Illinois. So I don't even know, probably 15 years now at least, we've been using the term English language learner. And then at some point in the last 5 to 8 years, I don't remember when, Illinois dropped the language to just English learner, but it's still the same thing. So an English learner is a child, according to Illinois school code and reg, that has been screened and assessed and determined to be still learning English. So they're not yet considered to be fluent in the English language. So they would therefore require some type of services to aid them. And then depending on the type of program that you have, there would be different requirements around native language and English language instruction. So none of these terms are offensive. They just mean different things. One of the most important things to walk away from today is to know that dual language learner, that term that's used at the national level, causes a great deal of confusion in the state of Illinois among the K-12 ESL bilingual community. Because in the kindergarten to 12th grade world, dual language programming means something very specific. It's kind of considered like the cream of the crop programming for kids, K-12. It is not a descriptive term of the child themselves, but rather the programming, the curriculum that child is receiving in the type of classroom they're sitting in each day. Whereas dual language learner is meant to describe a child. So in the early childhood community, if we use the term DLL when talking to a school age person, they're going to think you're talking about the kind of instruction that kid is receiving. And so again, causes a ton of confusion. For that reason alone, I pretty much don't use the term because I interact with so many K-12 folks too. All right. If you have further questions on that, you can always throw them in the chat and I will address them as we go through. All right, so here is some little snapshots, if you will, of some of the components of the Essential Actions Resource Kit. I show this to you so you can see what it looks like and see if it looks familiar to you. What I would love to know is if you know how to raise your hand on Zoom. If you would, raise your hand if you have already downloaded whatever pieces you wanted of this Essential Actions Toolkit. That way I know how many of you have already got it. And okay, so I see a couple people have already downloaded it. And when you download it like in a giant zip file. And then you can, unzip it at your leisure and pull out the components you want. Okay, so it looks like about 4 or 5 people have already pulled it off the internet at least. Take another quick look here. I'm realizing I'm not seeing as many as I could. Okay, cool, awesome, thank you. That's really helpful. All right, so if you can unraise your hand, I know there's a way for me to do it, but I can't talk and click at the same time very well. All right, so this resource kit, again, I'll walk you through at the end today of how to download this. It is available for free, as you see here, in English, also in Spanish, Arabic, and Simplified Chinese. And you get all of these components plus a couple other sheets that you don't see on the slide here. Like, what do they call them? There's a comparing results page, and then there's a thing about interpreting the scoring tools for each of these different self-assessments that you see here. The Promising Practices book, like the second edition of the Promising Practices book, and then the new companion guide that goes along with all these resources here. Again, all of this, including the 2 books, are available in all those different languages. Cool. All right. So, as I said, each needs assessment has its own matching scoring tool document. Then there's another sheet for comparing results from the different needs assessments, and all of it you can pull down in the languages that you would like. Here's something that's really important that I wanted to mention to you. because you wouldn't know this until you actually download it. The kit is for your personal, non-commercial use only, and fair use of the kit includes reproduction for personal use. What that means is you each need to go on and download it yourself. That's why we did not send it to you as part of the handouts for today, because that would have been a violation of copyright. So we didn't want to do that. And again, I'll walk you through how to get it at the end. I just see a question that popped up in the chat box asking about which one is correct, multilingual teacher versus or multilingual learner teacher, English learner teacher. You know, honestly, I'll tell you, Nancy, it depends on the district you work in. When I first started in 1999, I was a potentially English proficient teacher, which that was not my favorite term. You know, and then we were the only district that used that term. Neither one would be considered offensive. I think it depends on the district that you work in or the program you work in. So, all right. So how familiar are you with these 14 essential actions? Because it's possible that you've got the toolkit, you've looked at it before, but maybe you've never looked at the actual essential actions themselves. So if you would, just like last time, click on something here. Is this the first time you've heard of this list of 14 essential actions for preschool? Maybe you could write like a sentence or a paragraph. Maybe you feel like you could write an essay. I'm not going to ask you to do any of those things. I just want to get a sense of how much you already know about these essential actions. Yep, no problem, Nancy. Okay, so the clear leader of the pack here at the moment is, this is the first I've heard of these things. That's exactly what I figured, but I thought I would ask the question, right? I don't want to assume. So the vast majority of people, 18 out of 21, said, yeah, I have no idea. That's why I'm here. Right. All right, cool. So these 14 essential actions, these were launched by WIDA in the toolkit that you've downloaded or will be downloading later today. Back in the fall, I think it was October that they launched it. The essential actions themselves, there are 14 of them, are arranged in 3 different what they call areas of focus. So I pulled the Venn diagram here and put it on here for you, and then also added in the various essential actions, EA meaning essential actions, so you can see how they're grouped. Now, arguably, some of these essential actions could, maybe could fit in more than one area of focus, but for the purpose of our discussion today, as well as the purposes of the toolkit, we'd stuck them only in one area of focus each. So they're not necessarily in numerical order or in any particular pattern, but you can see that they all do go somewhere, either in gathering information and reflecting, planning, or teaching and learning. All right. No single essential action, or EA, is considered to be more important than any other essential action. With that being said, both WIDA and I would say that, starting with 1 and 2 is a pretty decent place to start, because it talks about collaboration. You don't have to, but I think it makes some sense to do that. So that's what we're gonna do. There we go. So first, we're going to take a look at planning. So this is that first area of focus that we just talking about. And within here, I just pulled over for you a little sneak peek at the first essential action, which is to collaborate to ensure that all adults that are interacting with multilingual children support language development. So you can think for a moment, what might that look like? What are some different ways that could play out? One of the first things that I thought of that this could be would be learning to pronounce everybody's name. And in this day and age with smartphones and different ways to record, we can record a parent pronouncing a child's name so that we can make sure we're pronouncing it as best we can the way that the parents intend that name to be pronounced. And to this point, I always like to share at least one kid's book, If you are not yet familiar with this book, and actually, let me ask, how many of you are familiar with this book? Alma and How She Got Her Name. Has anybody ever heard this one or familiar with it? Okay, Denise knows it. Anybody else? Okay, so 2 people are familiar with this book. If you were to Google this, you can find, people reading it online pretty easily. let me play just a little bit of it for you so you can get a sense of how this book goes. So again, it's called Alma and How She Got Her Name. And I won't play the whole thing, just a little bit.
Alma and How She Got Her Name. Written and illustrated by Juana Martinez Mio. Alma Sofia Esperanza Jose Pura Candela had a long name. Too long, if you asked her. My name is so long, Daddy. It never fits, Alma said. Come here, he said. Let me tell you the story of your name. Then you decide if it fits. Sophia was your grandmother, he began. She loved books.
Oh, my apologies. I clicked on something and messed it up. Oh, let me try that again. Oh, no, not again. No.
Name. Too long, if you asked her. My name is so long, Daddy. Come here, he said. Let me tell you the story of your name. Then you decide if it fits. Sophia was your grandmother, he began. She loved books, poetry, jasmine flowers, and, of course, me. She was the one who taught me how to read. I love books and flowers, and you too, Daddy. I am Sophia. Esperanza was your great-grandmother, he continued. She hoped to travel, but never left the city where she was born. Her only son grew up to cross the 7 seas. Wherever her sailor son went, so did Esperanza's heart. He was an artist with a big family, like many people had back then. Early each morning, he walked to the mountains and the plazas to paint everyday life. Sometimes I went along. Your grandfather taught me to see and love our people. I wake up early every day, and I draw a lot too. This morning, I drew a kitty cat for you, Daddy. I am Jose. Pura was your great aunt. She believed that the spirits of our ancestors are always with us, watching over us. When you were born, she tied a red string around your wrist, a charm to keep you safe.
All right, so I'm going to stop it right here for the sake of time, but you get the sense of how the book goes. They go through each of her different names and who it was that she was named after. And then at the very end, he talks about Alma, her first name, which is actually translates into English from Spanish as soul, S-O-U-L. And so it helps, I think, broach the topic of names and names that might sound different, you know, similar to like chrysanthemum or something like that, but also the history and the relevance of our names and pronouncing them correctly. And I have actually heard, since I've been sharing this with different groups, that folks have used this as a really powerful team building activity. If they're an administrator with their staff, say at the beginning of a school year, as a way to open up and have conversations with each other, like in small groups, about what is the story of our own names. And then using that to lead into why we learn how to pronounce our children's names correctly, and we don't give them Americanized names that aren't the names that their parents, gave them. So it was interesting to see that the Alma was in one of the little Scholastic flyers that came home with one of my kids from school. So it's now, pretty mainstream, it seems. It's been around for a few years, but now you can get it pretty cheap on Scholastic. So, all right. So gathering information and reflecting. This would be the blue, what do you call this? The second area of focus. So a sneak peek of one of the essential actions from there. Gather, okay, the wording of this one I think is clunky, but we'll get the idea, right? All right. gather information about multilingual children's cultures and languages that they've heard and used in the past and the present in order to support language development. So the idea here is gathering together information from both a language and cultural perspective, both currently for that child, but also historically, and use that information. Don't just gather it, but use it to support language development. All right. So let's talk about an example of something that maybe we don't talk about a whole lot with regards to culture. This interplay, I do other workshops on different topics, but the interplay between independence and interdependence. So in many US families, not all, but many, independence is a goal of child rearing. So an example of that might be the way that you feed a child. You can see here we've got, how old this child might be, around a year old or something, with some pasta and a bowl. And you can see that the child has clearly been self-feeding and all that comes along with that, right? So the goal here, it would seem, from these caregivers or from these parents, is for one of independence and exploration and sensory experiences. Now, that may be the case in some families, but that is not necessarily the goal in all, and it isn't the goal in all American families. In many American families, the goal is actually one of interdependence. And by that, I mean, the goal is not for a child to be acting independently, but rather for a child to learn how to accept help, rather than learn how to only stand on their own 2 feet. Also, in many, when we talk specifically about feeding practices, it's a way to involve older members of the family as well, so that you can imagine here that in some families, you might have the older generation feeding a child, not just say a 2-year-old, but also a child that's much older than 2 years old, because it's a way both for the older family members to be active, but also, again, a way to learn how to accept help. And this just makes me laugh too, because I am periodically trying to teach my children how to use chopsticks, and I can see why one would have older family members of children use chopsticks, because it's a hot mess, at least in my household. All right, very good. What are we doing so far? All right, teaching and learning. This is the last area of focus in the Essential Actions Toolkit. So here we have some photos of children in actual preschool classrooms where you can see they're engaging in different types of play. The important part to note here is that you'll see this particular teacher was actually talking to this child, and it doesn't show very well on the screen here, but this child has Mindy, or henna, I should say, on her hands, some leftover temporary tattoos from a family party she had gone to over the weekend, and the teacher was asking about them. And this particular child rarely uttered more than 1 or 2 words at a time in the classroom, but when this teacher asked about her arms and about the tattoos, the temporary tattoos on her arms, she opened up and actually gave her first complete sentence that school year when she was talking about something that was culturally relevant to her. Down here, we have kids making tortillas out of Play-Doh, and then subsequent to this, these are actual tortilla presses. They were actually passing the tortillas around the class, passing them around the classroom to like feed everybody. All right. And then our last sneak peek from this area of focus, Action 9, design language learning experiences. Think back to what we were just looking at, with consideration for the socio-cultural context. So how are these experiences in the classroom reflecting the cultural context of the kids that we have in our rooms? All right. Again, some examples of that, not just what I showed you there, but maybe we're thinking about how we as educators learn keywords and phrases of the languages that our kids speak and have been exposed to. Important here, though, we hear about this all the time. Learn a couple words, learn a couple phrases. Please, please, please don't let them be disciplinary words. Don't let the only words you learn in Spanish, or maybe don't even learn them at all, or pick the language of your kids, be line up or sit down or be quiet. Like, no, 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 no. We should not be using the native language only for direct commands, because what that does is that teaches kids that those languages are not languages of academics or language of learning or language of exploration, but rather languages of what could be perceived as reprimand or of, I don't know. So make sure we're learning keywords and phrases. We're thinking about how to bring in the children's language into the classroom. I am a huge proponent of free. This is an actual example from my I can't remember where I got this from my son's preschool. I can't remember where I got this picture from, but they were learning about squares. And so you see, they cut out pictures of squares. Okay, arguably, I know that's technically not a square, but we're talking about preschool here, right? Okay, so squares. And then you'll see that the word for square is written in all these different scripts. And then over here, we have the language that it is. And then if needed, how to pronounce it, because I can't read Korean, but I guess one would pronounce that something in the general vicinity of Nemo. And isn't this a cool way to show kids texts, different texts from different languages? All right. So again, most people start with essential actions 1 and 2. However, you don't have to do them in any particular order. You don't have to read them from 1 to 14. You don't have to implement them in order. So I'll leave that there. So here's what I'm wondering is, do any of these 3 essential actions that I just shared with you, are any of them surprising to you? And the ones that I shared with you, and if you have the handout for today, they're actually on the second page right here at the top of the page. I shared with you essential action 1, 2, and 9. You don't have to wait. You can go ahead and hit enter as soon as you write that number in there. But did any of them surprise you? Or were there any keywords or phrases from them that you weren't expecting to see? All right, so no surprises so far from the couple of folks who have responded. Cool. All right, so no surprises seems to be the theme of what's popping up in the chat box. Good. I'm glad to hear that. So here's what I would like you to do then next. In just a moment, because as I mentioned earlier, it is not a strength of mine to talk and click at the same time. I'm going to be putting you into breakout rooms. And once I do that, I'll upload the handout into the chat box so that you have it in case you haven't downloaded it already. But what I'd like you to do when you get into your breakout rooms is I'd like you to first decide who's going to be the reporter. Then I'd like you to go back and take a look at those sample essential actions we just looked at and talk with each other about which ones of these 3 are you already implementing well in your classroom, in your program? Are there any of them you want to learn a little bit more about, or maybe get some ideas from colleagues on? And then when we come back together in a little bit, I'm going to ask that reporter to share, especially if there's any themes among the folks that are in your group. Now, give me just a second to do a time check here. Okay, we've got time. All right, cool. So how about we give them, Karen, if you would, could you give them like 6 minutes plus the 1 minute? So I guess 7 minutes in the breakout room. There we go. Okay, awesome. All right, so the reporter that hopefully you chose a reporter for your group. Could your reporter please share 1 or maybe 2 highlights from your group's conversation? And I will let you can raise your hand if you're willing to share, and then you can go ahead and unmute and share the highlights.
We did not come up with a reporter exactly. We just jumped right in, but I will share a little bit about what we discussed, and it was about saying names correctly and trying to pronounce until you get it right, a child's name, and let them help you and ask parents for help. I shared that I had some English language learning families, in our program, and one was Japanese and the other was Spanish, which I am not terribly familiar with Spanish, but more so than I am Japanese. That was many, many years ago, but I did talk to the parents about pronunciation of some different words that I knew I was going to have to use in the classroom, like colors and numbers and, outside, inside, restroom, ones that feelings, happy, sad, those type of things, so that at least I could make an effort and try to make that child feel like, they were accepted and equal in our classroom.
Awesome. Thank you, Erica. I appreciate that. See, I saw a couple different hands go up. Keila? I'm sorry, I forgot how to say your name.
Kayla.
Kayla.
Thank you. So we talked about how, I guess both our cases, both of our teams are strong about in integrating the cultural background of the child in the classroom. I'm trying to remember specific examples, but like, I remember from my team, I said they are good about using key phrases like, oh, we're going to the bathroom, or good morning, how are you, in the language, the target language. And they're very committed, like they made a point to learn those for them. And that helps them because it helps them build rapport with them when there's that language barrier. And the person I was talking to said that in her team, they're very good about asking culturally relevant questions so the kids get involved. Kind of like the example you were giving with the henna tattoo. Yeah. So good about collaboration between teams and implementing that teaching and learning in their routines.
Excellent, thank you. Let's see, who else has got their hand up? Elise? Is that the proper pronunciation? Miss
Yep.
Copeland?
Elise, yep.
Awesome.
So our group really talked about, we felt that our programs were pretty strong with like knowing the languages that our students are coming in speaking, and some of their cultural backgrounds. But then the third part where you would do more of that like implementation, we think we could probably work on. And we talked about how it can be tricky to implement that sometimes because you don't want to be offensive accidentally. And we talked about how one way to avoid that would be having parents come in and provide like, come and maybe read a story or do an activity that is important to their family and their culture.
Excellent. And I'll piggyback off that because we talked about this in one of my other webinars. We talked about culturally relevant dramatic play areas, but parents are ideal. I mean, it's ideal now that we're finally post-COVID or whatever we want to call this world now, that when parents, if they're able to now come back into the classroom or other family members, they may find that the most welcoming part of a preschool classroom is actually the dramatic play area, especially when that dramatic play area looks like something that's familiar to them. So as I showed you in those pictures before, you have tortilla presses. If that's something that might be familiar to your family members, you can dive right into that dramatic play area and participate and interact with children there. Not everyone's going to want to come and read a story, even necessarily in their home language. That might not just be something that they're comfortable doing, but they may be willing to come in and help set up the grocery store, in the dramatic play area, and include articles in that grocery store that they would actually buy at the store, right? For example, that kind of thing. Cool. Awesome. Let's see. We've got, this is a bit odd on Zoom to make sure I'm seeing everybody here. I don't see anybody else's hands up, but I'm wondering if there are any other groups that maybe you don't want to raise your hand or you can't figure out where the little hand is, because I get that. But you would be willing to share what some of your conversations were, maybe one or two highlights from your group.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely. Norma, yeah.
In our group, we basically said, about the culture thing. One thing that we realized too, that even within our classroom, most of my students are from Hispanic descent and do speak Spanish at home. We realized that because they are from different parts, most are from Mexico, but some are from different parts of Central America, they don't use the same words that we use in Spanish. So recognizing that, and, we already use a lot of English and Spanish. Typically when we have work that we put up, we always write English and Spanish on it. But then we started to realize, like I said, that some of the words are different depending what part of, Central America you're from. So we started adding those words. And when we started doing that, we realized there's an African-American girl in our classroom, a Black girl. And she sometimes uses different words for English words, like, their pronunciation or what they use to say those words. So to make her feel, like she's part of the group as well, and that, her language mattered as well, we started using and taking her into consideration when those, instances came up.
And how cool that you're doing that. You're accepting all of the languages that the children bring into the classroom. At the word level, that can also be done like at the sentence or phrase level too, right? Students will use all of their languages to express themselves. Sometimes we call that code switching, or probably more appropriately translanguaging. And that's a perfectly fine thing to do. It is not an example of confusion. It's an example of children creatively using all of the resources that are available to them. And you're right, there's 19 different countries that speak Spanish. Of course, there's going to be variation. We've got variation in English just from here to Texas, or from here to England or Australia, right? Just to, name a few of that. And they're all perfectly correct, for wherever the regionalisms, or wherever it is that you might be from and where you've learned the language. So that's awesome. Sometimes we even have that difference between the teacher and the students. If the teacher is from, let's say, for example, Spain is one example where I've seen this happen, because some of our school districts in Illinois have partnerships with Spain. And so they bring teachers over from Spain, and the language they're speaking in Spain and the words they use in Spain are very different than the words we use here in American Spanish, not to mention Latin American Spanish from the different countries, right? All of it's correct. All of it is used appropriately for communication, but it is different. So cool. And that's great lessons that you can teach your kids. Essentially what we would call metalinguistic awareness, understanding more about their language. We have school language, we have home language, and different home languages as well in different contexts. Very cool. Awesome. All right. Last call. Anybody else want to add a highlight that we haven't yet talked about that you did in your group? If you do, you can just go ahead and unmute, because I can't see all of you at the same time, unfortunately. Or if I do that, I can't see my slide. Cool. All right. Any questions at this point? You can put them in the chat so that I can go and address those for you, either now or in a little bit. And I'm going to do a quick time check. Or if there's a question, maybe you are not able to type at the moment, maybe you're driving or something, you can unmute and ask that too if you'd like. That would be fine.
I don't have a question. I made a comment to my group. One of the things that I've noticed that some of our families are actually changing their children's names to make them easier for us to say. And with a 2-year-old, if he's called Adish at home and Adam here, he's not answering to Adam for a little while every morning. And it's a dilemma. I've talked to the speech therapist who is from early intervention about it, and about how I would really like to I'm going to end up talking to the parents and going back to his given name in his language, because I think it's a travesty, because he doesn't know we're talking to him. So, and it's them trying to fit in and them trying to make it easier for people to say his name, but I don't think it's just making him have another hurdle.
And I would say I've definitely seen that. I saw that back when I started teaching in '99, that kind of thing, even with older children. And what I found in talking with families about it, obviously with an interpreter most of the time, is that they had already experienced so many people that were not willing to try to pronounce the names correctly, that they essentially had just given up and figured they had to give their kid an American name. And it can be so validating that we're actually going to try. I think it's absolutely worth having the conversation with the family and let them know that you want to pronounce the child's name as best as you're capable of doing it. Because I realize there are some sounds in some languages that can be tricky, but we want to do our best to try to pronounce the name, because that is the name the child knows, right? Because what will happen is that becomes that child's de facto name. Now, that being said, I'll share this story with you. I've shared it with other groups when I was teaching. So I've been both a bilingual 4th, 5th grade multi-age pull-out teacher for both Spanish and English. Spanish is my second language, but I also was an ESL pull-out teacher as well, which means I pulled kids out from kindergarten to 6th grade in different groups from different languages and such. And I had like, I don't even know anymore, 80 different languages of kids I served. So there's one particular child that and this was, you know, in the early O's, I looked at his name, I pronounced it the way I thought it was supposed to be pronounced. I could have sworn it was how, I don't know, someone told me to pronounce it. I said this child's name, and I don't remember now for sure which way was right and which way was wrong, but let's say it was Hyun. He was from Korea, South Korea, and I called him that. His other teachers called him that for at least a year and a half. Maybe it was a solid 2 years before he actually, one, trusted me enough, and two, you know, felt confident enough in English to pull me aside one day and tell me that I'd actually been mispronouncing his name and calling him a girl's name for almost 2 years. Yeah. And it's been 20 years. And I have not forgotten that. The importance of pronouncing a kid's name right. I mean, it's huge. It's huge. And I remember the look on his face when he had the guts to tell me, you know, and you know, we didn't know. So please, please, please have the conversations with the family members and figure out as best you can how to say the kid's name right. They shouldn't have to take an American name because we don't want to try, you know. And I know it's hard, but it's important. Okay. Very good. All right. So how do you best learn? I'm just wondering, we got a little poll for you. Do you prefer when it's a new topic? Do you prefer to read about that thing? Do you prefer to see examples or talk with others about examples of how they've put particular concepts into place? Do you prefer self-reflection, like doing a little checklist, you know, like those internet checklists, right? Like, ooh, you know, which one of these things to apply to me or whatever? What's your preferred thing? Don't worry, I'm not going to make you do it. I'm just wondering and asking you to think about it. What's your preferred way about learning, or your best way of learning about something new? All right, so we've still got a fair number of people who need to reply, but it looks like we've got, wow, nobody's interested in self-reflection. That's okay. That's fine. We got a chunk of people who like to read about new things, and a lot of people who like to see examples of how others have put concepts into action. And that makes sense given the conversation we just had where we talked about examples of some of these essential actions. All right, cool. So you can see how that shook out, 21 to 5. All right. There it is. Here's what I wanted to share with you next and spend a little bit of time on. And at the end of this, I'm going to actually send you back into your breakout rooms to talk some more about this, about these different pathways and which ways you think might be of most interest to you and the different components that are in here, especially for those of you that have maybe downloaded the resource kit already. You might be able to share what you've noticed from that. So within the book itself, within the toolkit itself, they talk about, let me show you here. So within the toolkit, there's the companion guide, right, to the WIDA essential actions. And then within here, they actually talk about 3 different sample pathways that one could learn about the essential actions. This is the first one, which I have up on the screen for you already, where it says Assistant Director Sample Pathway. And this is the story of Virginia. So this would be on page 14, but you can find it easily enough later when you download this. And she talks about having been an early Head Start teacher, and now she's an assistant director in her program. And she tends to prefer to read about stuff first. So she talks about her pathway that she plans to take to learn about these essential actions, and that she's first going to start with reading the book, the Promising Practices book. Then she's going to move into maybe doing the program needs assessment and see how that looks for her program. Then maybe looking at the Educator self-assessment and the family questionnaire. And then finally, maybe doing the online learning course that's available from WIDA. So that's the path that she thinks will work best for her. Then the next one, she happens to be a teacher assistant. Now that has, frankly, that has no relevance. It just happens to be the one that says she's a teaching assistant, so it's easier for you to find it. It's not defined by your role. It's just they happen to use a teacher assistant as an example here. This is Sophia, and she talks about working in a 3, 4, 5-year-old classroom. And she said she would prefer to actually start with the examples, that sample pathway, right? Let me see how others have done this. So to do that, you would want to start with the examples that are in the Essential Actions e-learning course, which is a free online course with a small c, right? Takes about an hour to do. Don't think college class here. We're talking like 1 hour little course. That she would want to start with that, kind of see how these essential actions would be in a classroom, then maybe move into some of the questionnaires and self-assessments, and then maybe talk some things over, set some goals for herself and such. This is a screenshot of what the login sheet looks like, or login screen looks like for the WIDA Secure portal. It's the same way you would actually get the toolkit itself. So, and again, I'll walk you through that later. And then the last one they happen to have, again, just happens to be a teacher leader, but it could be, any position. This one, nobody wanted this. So very quickly, I'm just going to tell you, in this case, you would start with one of the little toolkits. You'd use one of these little screeners. So in this case, the educator self-assessment, she would fill this out for herself and then move on from there in her learning path. Since we've got this on the screen here, let me just show you some of the samples of what this would look like when you download it. First, the layout is such that it tells you the area of focus and the different essential actions. This is like 4 pages long. I just screenshotted the first one for you. Happens that this first one is around essential actions 2 and 4, and it says examine your own cultural beliefs, cultural background, and beliefs about language development. How often do I do that? Never, rarely, sometimes, often, very often, not applicable. For example, sequential and simultaneous bilingualism, code switching, translanguaging, cultural influences on child rearing. Gosh, we've touched on a number of these already. Language development, biases and assumptions, so on and so forth. So she would rate herself on that, right? And kind of see where she falls. So there's one of these for an educator self-assessment. There's another one for a family questionnaire, and then finally a program needs assessment. Not exactly, but more or less the same type of layout for them. All right. So as promised, I'm going to send you back to your breakout rooms. What I'd love for you to discuss, you could have the same reporter, different reporter, doesn't matter. Review the different pathways. Which one sounds the best to you and why? And maybe talk about that for a little bit. Maybe talk about some of the professional development initiatives that you might have going on in your program. And can you bring this back as you think and plan for next school year? Before I send you back to the breakouts, let me point this out. So the sample pathways start with either the Promising Practices book or the e-learning course or the educator self-assessment. Maybe you don't like any of these and you'd rather do it a different way. Maybe you'd rather pair up with somebody and hold each other accountable for reading, or doing this thing, Maybe that's a piece that you would want to add. But you'll notice here that it says the Essential Actions e-learning course must be done by June 30th, 2023. So we recently learned from the WIDA Early Years Consortium that they're going to be making some changes to this online course, and they're going to be pulling it down. This is not, hugely public knowledge yet. It's not a secret, but it's, it's not something we've been publicizing much yet. But since you're here today and I'm telling you about this course, I have to tell you that the thing's going to come down off the internet on June 30th for a couple of months. They're going to retool it. They're going to add a little more content to it and then relaunch it in the fall. But I don't know about you, but I'm the kind of person that, like, if it's there and it's free, I'd rather do it now and get it done. And then eventually I'll get to the new one when the fall rolls around, because fall for me is always a crazy time of year. So I just wanted you to know why it says that there, because they are going to retool it and make it a little more robust than what it is right now. All right. So with that being said, if you would go back into your breakout rooms, quick time check. Let's do about the same amount of time as we did last time, maybe 6-7 minutes. So you have a chance to talk and think about how you might want to interact with this content. All right, welcome back. All right. All right. So before we share out from the groups, I just wanted to share with you that on page 17 of the companion guide, they actually have a blank template that you can use, same format as the ones I was showing you earlier, where you can actually record for yourself what your personal learning pathway might be. So, or you just, jot it down on a piece of paper. All right. So with that being said, I would love to hear 1, 2, 3 highlights from your group. As I said, this is the first time we're doing this particular webinar and that I'm presenting this content to you. So it'd be super helpful for me as we plan for the future here at ECPL as well. What your thoughts are around this toolkit, around this content, about what you would need to learn more, apprehensions you might have, you're ready to dive in, all that kind of stuff would be awesome. Kayla, I see your hand first. You want to jump in?
Yeah.
Alright.
So we've had similar approaches, I guess. We both said we'd start reading about it and then look at the examples in a deeper way in the e-course, and then sporadically assess ourselves with the assessment sheets. And we were also wondering, do the districts make our accounts for the WIDA website, or can anybody make an account in the WIDA website?
Okay.
And do we have to pay?
Totally free. And I will show you how to do it in a little bit. There is a magical little link that you click on off of our website. And so for that, if we can hang on till we're done with the conversation, I'm going to show everybody how exactly to do that. Yep.
Okay.
But good question. Awesome. Okay, cool. Thank you. Let's see I saw Nicole's hand go up next, I think.
Yeah, we both said that we would probably do the e-learning course to begin with. Just seeing examples helps us to learn better, and then reading about it after that to deepen our understanding, and self-assessment, to see how we feel like we're implementing. For me, I'm getting an ESL student next year, so I currently don't have, like practical experience in the classroom. So self-assessing wouldn't be that helpful to me right now.
Fair enough. All right, cool. Excellent. Tammy, do you want to go next?
Sure, Tammy. Our group really seemed to also be in the consensus of taking the course. There was just a little clarity that we needed.
Sure.
Is it just the course that's going to be gone from the website after June 30th? Not worrying about our whole accounts, right?
No, the accounts will continue to live on, but the content is coming down. And they're going to retool the essential actions content and then load it back up again. So I am strongly going to be encouraging people to download whatever you want before June 30th. WIDA has historically been super good about sticking to the timelines that they announce, but you figure you always realize it would be my luck to realize a week after they take it down that I needed something that I didn't actually download. Right.
Yeah. And people in the group were talking about just being able to take time to wrap their heads around all the different handouts and the companion piece and everything. Just, because they're feeling just a little confused right now, and I explained how, even though I've been kind of immersed in this for a little while, that I still really have to go back and recheck and rethink, because there's a lot of good content.
And I'll be honest with you, when I downloaded this the first time too, and then, maybe it's my age, I don't know, I needed to hold it, I needed to print it, I needed to have it in my hands before I finally felt like, okay, now I get what this is, right? Maybe I'm kinesthetic or something, I don't know. But even then, yeah, it's a lot. There's a lot of pieces, a lot of different things. And that's why I like this idea of like, what's the first thing I want to look at? It's not meant to be, 1 year's worth of learning. The reality is you're probably going to be interacting with these documents in one way, shape, or form going forward, right? But you're not meant to learn it all overnight. This is a lot of content that's embedded in here, and a lot that we can kind of digest and work through. So awesome, cool. Anybody else that would like to share, knowing that we can't all necessarily figure out where the little hand button is, so you can just unmute and talk if you want. That's cool too. To be honest, I was on a meeting earlier today. I couldn't find the little hand button, so I totally get it.
Yeah, I can't find it, so I'll just talk. I went on earlier thinking that I was going to download everything and get it ready. And somehow I think I got into the e-learning, and I was watching videos and answering questions. So it wasn't until you showed just now and I went back in it and I was like, so I think I actually started.
It sounds like you might have, and you might have been incredibly close to the little button to download everything, but just
Probably, yeah. But what I did, well, so actually I think I did, because it says that I've like completed it, because I got a little certificate. I did the Exploring WIDA Early Years Essential Actions, not the Essential Actions Resource Kit. Does that make sense? So
yeah, that does make sense. Okay.
So I did the exploring and was answering questions, and I found it really interesting and helpful. Sorry, my family's talking really loud. But I would also say that, yes, I found it interesting. The videos were great, and I can tell that that is my best learning style. So I will probably print everything, and I want a copy, and then I would go back in and do the, the next course, the Essential Actions Resource Kit, and then actually go through those videos.
And that reminds me that I should clarify, there's the kit, which actually, when you go in there, there isn't much of a course in there. I think there's like a 10-minute
A
introduction.
video,
or
11
something.
minute. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, 11 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's it. And then you download all the stuff that's in there. Then there's the core. It's got to do with the way their LMS is set up, that it's two separate things in there. So thank you for reminding me to highlight the fact that there's two different chunks. Both of those would be coming down on June 30th or July 1st, actually. And then ultimately going back up in a different, I don't know exactly what it'll look like when it goes back up, but so you'd want to go in and use both of those. So cool. Anybody else want to share highlights from their conversation before we get into how to actually find all of this stuff and download it successfully off the internet? And if you want to throw a question in the chat box, you can do that too. That's fine.
Can I ask? We discussed about what would be the preferred pathway to take to. One of the people in my group said that she downloaded a book and it had 90 something pages. So we were just wondering, because not all of us were able to look at all the material.
Yeah.
If you would suggest to do the training first or to read the book first, or can it be done or should be done in conjunction?
You know what, really, I think you're not going to like this answer, but really, I think it's a personal preference. And she's right. This thing is 98 pages long. I have the luxury, and I realize not everyone does have the luxury of an office that can print stuff out for me. It's perfectly fine to print it in, black and white. It doesn't have to be in color. But, if you're having to print this on your own printer at home, I wouldn't necessarily start with the book then. I might start with the course and see and decide what are the materials I really need to print off if I'm the one that's going to be doing the printing, right? I would say if you really, really want someone to give you, their opinion, or you want someone to flip a coin for you, knowing that the course is going to go away on June 30th, I would say start with that, because once it goes away, we can't get it back, right? I'm sure it'll be better when it comes back. It'll be more robust. They're talking about adding some more cool stuff into it, but it's an hour. I would say I'd probably do that first, just to have done it before it goes away. Yeah. So good questions. All right. So as a reminder, these are the different main components. Whoa, not want to do that. Just a second. There we go. All right. Sorry, my chat box became huge and I couldn't see anything. All right. So these are the different main components of the toolkit. So when you download the English toolkit, it's going to come in one zipped file with all of this stuff within it, in that zipped file. Okay. Same thing when you download Spanish, Arabic, and Chinese. It's going to have all of these documents within that zipped file. Then I use a PC, so I cannot speak to Macs at all, but you do have to somehow unzip that folder in order to access the different things that are in there. So without further ado, let me show you how to do that and how to get to the course. All right, so this is the Essential Actions online course, like I showed you earlier. I could show you some screenshots, or if you give me a second, I'll actually just go out to the internet, and assuming the internet's working, because apparently we've got a thunderstorm coming in where I live, I'll actually just log in. Okay, so give me just a second. So I have to reshare my screen for you momentarily. Let's see here. Oh, that was not what I wanted to do. New share. There we go. Are you looking at the WIDA login page? If I can get a thumbs up from somebody. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to log in. If you don't yet have a login, oh, wait. First step, I promised Kayla I was going to do this. Hold on. Okay. You go to our webpage. Obviously, I have it bookmarked. All right. So you go to our webpage. This is the part of the ECPL webpage that is dedicated specifically to things related to English learners, multilingual learners. You know, because it's got the 3 little kiddos up at the top of the page that are leaning on a purple gymnastics mat. So you go to this page and you scroll. Okay. So you scroll down. This is where we keep everything. You know, we curate all the different resources that are, and everything up here is free, by the way. You know, any new upcoming things. This is today's webinar, Online Admin Academy. When it's up, you know, when there's another date, it'll be there. But scroll down till you see the WIDA logo. The first thing you're going to want to do is click on this link. If you already have a WIDA secure portal account that you created at some point in the past, still click on this link, because somehow this magical link will upload for you all of the WIDA Early Years content when you next log into your account for Illinois. If you don't yet have an account, you're going to click on this link and then create for yourself an account. Okay. And then you're going to have access to all of this stuff. All of these steps, I tweaked them a little bit. All these steps are also in the handout that you have for today's session as well. All right. So once you log in, which I already did, you're going to scroll down and look for professional learning. Click on that. And I have access to a whole bunch of stuff. So let me filter out the stuff that you care the most about, early years for today. All right. You may not have all these choices on your side. That's because I have access through I have the K-12 stuff too. But I'm just going to filter out early years for now, which is preschool content. You'll notice there are all sorts of courses that are in here. I'm going to scroll down until I see the words essential actions. First, you'll see probably in the same order, the essential actions resource kit. On your screen, it's not going to say go to course. It's going to say something like enroll in course or enroll. I don't remember. It's been a while. Click on that and then actually go into the course. Okay. I'm already enrolled, so I can go into it. This is the course where you actually download the kit itself. Down here where it says exploring, this is what was Nancy, I think, was telling us before, that she had gone in here and started watching the various videos and then ultimately got the certificate. This is where you would actually go in to learn more about the different components. Both of these things are going to go away on July 1st. So I'd recommend going in there. In fact, frankly, I would go in and do any and all of these that you find interesting sooner, rather than later, because we're anticipating that WIDA, if they're, making changes to these, they're going to be probably making changes to a lot of this stuff soon. Okay, so you go in here into the resource kit one itself. You click on it. Again, you'd have to click the enroll button and then go in. Seriously, I raised my own hand. How did I do that? Okay, anyway. So you can tell, not my day on Zoom. All right, so you scroll down. First things first, there's a little 11-minute webinar that you can, or recorded webinar thing you can watch. It's even got the transcript you can read. Okay, you're looking for resources. Ta-da! Here's what you want. Download them. You just click on the languages you want and you'll get the zipped file. You can download just English. You can download all 4 of them. Here's a little caveat. If you keep scrolling, it actually gives you the option then to download each of the individual components. But there's no need for you to do that because you just downloaded the whole thing with this English button up here. Arabic, Simplified Chinese, and Spanish. Okay. So that's what I would suggest doing first. Download them. They're relatively small files in the grand scheme of things. So if you're not sure if you're going to need all the languages, I'd just download them anyway. Have them available to you. And then go back. And you can then go into the actual course itself and complete the different videos and things that are in there. Okay. Oh, thank you, Karen, for that reminder as well. When you complete these courses, so not the resource kit, because that's not really a course, that's just downloading stuff. But as you complete the various courses that are in here, each and every one of them that's in here, you can get gateways and ISB credit for if you would like them. So what'll happen is when you finish the course itself, at the end of the month, we batch out those. We take a look at who has completed them and we send you an email. Actually, I shouldn't even say we because it's Karen that does it. I don't. She'll send you an email with a link where you'll complete an evaluation and then you'd be able to get yourself both gateways and ISBE credit if you want both. Oh, did somebody have a question? Sorry, I heard a weird noise. Oh, Kayla's asking the how. Okay, so that's what I was just saying. So you would complete the course, and then when you get the email from Karen that says, click on this link, just like you'll get, frankly, it's the exact same process you'll get for this webinar today. You click on the link, you fill out the evaluation form, you say if you want Gateways credit, you give us your, your Gateways number and stuff, and then you'll get your certificate at the end. It's just that instead of, you won't get that link the day after you finish the online course, you'll get it at the end of the month or the beginning of the next month, actually, is when you would get that.
And what are gateways? What did you say?
Okay, if you don't know what Gateways is, that means you probably don't have to worry about it. Do you work for a school district?
I do.
That's okay. So folks that work in community-based organizations, child cares, nonprofits, in other words, they're in like a PFA program that's not affiliated with the school district. They do Gateways credit, generally speaking, and those affiliated with school districts do the ISBE credit. Similar idea,
Right.
just two different systems. So you can do both if you want. Some people do.
I'm asking because I've done other WIDA courses because we do Access, and I had to do a bunch of courses to do the screener and to do Access. Could I have gotten ISBE credits for that?
Yes, that is different. So for those of you that only work in preschools, you can tune me out for like 60 seconds here. If you work in a school district and you've done the K-12 stuff, I believe what you do is you email Sonia Serrano at the State Board of Education, and there is a way to get credit for some, if not all of them.
Okay.
At ISP.net. I believe that is her email address, assuming I spelled Serrano correctly. And her name is Sonia. What she's going to want is the certificate that you received when you finished it, which you should be able to download that in the WIDA portal somewhere. If you send her those, she needs proof, right, that you did it. And then, yeah, that's how that works.
Yay, thank you so much.
Sure. Little known fact. Well, there you go. Cool. Okay. So that's how you get both the resource kits as well as access the content around the course with a little c. For all of these, the different components of the Essential Actions Kit. And then as you can see, there's a number of other courses here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that you may, should be 6, 7, 8. Yeah, there we go. There they all are. This is a nice one for this time of year. This is outside the scope of today, but this talks about the transition to kindergarten. And it actually highlights Velma Thomas Preschool in the city of Chicago. So that's kind of a nice one to do if you're looking to get some hours in at the end of the year. All right, cool. Let me pop back over to my PowerPoint. Give me just a moment to do that. Okay. Just a couple other things I wanted to point out and make sure that you were aware these things exist. We're almost done. Yes. Okay. So on your handout for today, the first page has essentially a step-by-step of what we just did and how to log in. The second page has the breakout room questions, but down at the bottom, there's a couple of links that I threw on here. And the first one is a link to this document that you see, the serving, what we just call the FAQ document, but the proper name is what you see on the screen. It's about serving English language learners in preschool in public school districts in Illinois. So if you don't yet have that document, it was updated last March, definitely worth downloading and having. It's also linked to that part of the ECPL webpage that has the 3 little kids at the top. It's linked way down at the bottom. Speaking of which, the link to that webpage is also on this resource handout as well, so that you can go to it. I highly recommend bookmarking it because we're adding stuff to it all the time. Especially now, right now we're kind of phasing out at the end of the school year, right? But as we get into the summer and stuff, new things will go up on there. We keep all sorts of things on there, live webinar registration links, the online admin academy that I do usually every winter, the various on-demand courses from WIDA, and then downloadable resources and links to free videos of like preschool English learners in different settings, dual language and ESL and such are all on there. And again, everything is free for you. All right. Any last questions, comments, concerns? If you don't have questions, if you do, go ahead and put them in the chat. But in the meantime, also, if you could throw in the chat your biggest takeaway from today before I hand it back to Karen. As I said, brand new webinar for us. So it'd be super helpful for us to know if we should do this again or do it differently, or market it to a different audience, so to speak. All good for us to know. And whenever you're ready, you can hit go on the chat box. And remember, when you do the evaluation for this webinar too, which will be probably tomorrow or the next day, feel free to add thoughts in there too about other types of trainings that you would like to see, whether it's with regards to preschool English learners or whatever, whatever it might be about. It's that time of year where we're thinking about what we did and what we want to do going forward. So hopeful to hear from you about what you'd like to have next. Oop, there's my, I need to stop talking long. Okay, very good. Excellent. So I'm seeing lots of comments of the things that were useful to you. That's fantastic. I'm not seeing anything that ends with a question mark. So I'm taking that to mean that you don't